Hey, what is up, guys? It is Slikk here. I'm back again with another video, reporting to you live about Rocksteady's next title, which has been teased by Sefton Hill and Deeves on an AMA, which stands for Ask Me Anything, rather, that would be AME, Ask Me Anything on Reddit, which Deeves and Sefton Hill hosted from Rocksteady Studios. So, you know, the AMA went pretty well. I went through and read every single question. Some of them were really, really bad. Some of them were just stupid, and then, again, really, really bad. Okay, so some of the questions were repetitive and boring and bad, but most of them were really good and insightful. For instance, somebody asked Sefton Hill which of his moments from all three of the games that he created was his favorite, and at night he talked about how he really enjoyed the ending of the game, which is where Batman becomes a different version of the Batman. And basically at that point, that is confirming that Batman didn't die at the end of Batman Arkham Knight, as if we all didn't know that, but I guess some people didn't, because people were freaking out about this on Twitter. So I thought that I would include that in there, that the developers of Rocksteady themselves have confirmed that Batman didn't die. Again, I think all of us knew that, hopefully, but some people didn't, apparently. Moreover, there were some interesting details dropped regarding development for Batman Arkham Knight. For instance, the suit that we see in Batman Arkham Knight, that's a little bit more futuristic and has some tech and armor and stuff like that, was initially never in the game, and the suit looked a lot more like it did in Asylum and City. But then, once they started, you know, experimenting with the Batmobile and stuff like that, they realized that it didn't really look well juxtaposed with the Batmobile and all the tech that Batman was using, that classic suit. So they changed it and created more of a tech armor suit, and he said people spend many, many months developing the suit alone, which is really impressive. Moreover, he wanted to include a system with the Man-Bat, where the Man-Bat first jumps out at you and you're scared and stuff like that, that the PlayStation camera and maybe the Xbox Kinect, I don't know, would record you, and you can share that, you know, your reaction to the Man-Bat hopping out. That would have been a really cool feature. I mean, I know that I was scared shitless when the Man-Bat first appeared because I was playing the game at like 5 a.m., so I was already really tired, and that definitely got me, I gotta say. But the biggest thing to come out of this is Rocksteady's Sefton Hill once again confirms that they are in full development of their next title. They're, quote, as you can read here, hard at work on our next project, but we won't be releasing the details for a while. When we do, you guys will be the first to hear, as we want to get the community involved heavily in what we do next. So it sounds that there's going to be a focus on involving the community in their next game. I may be looking into this too far here, but I sort of read this in a way of like, they're potentially teasing a multiplayer game in the way. I mean, how would you include the community in something like a Batman Arkham game? I'm beginning to think about it. Like, if they were going to do, you know, let's say a Superman story game, right? Which I do believe they're developing. But it does seem weird that he would say this, right? I mean, in what way do you plan to involve the community? I mean, I guess in the promotion of the game and, you know, trailer reactions and stuff like that. Maybe that's what he's talking about. But there's also the other way that you go, where involving the community in such a way that it's, like, massively multiplayer online or has an online element to it, which I think is somewhat likely, and is not unreasonable. Rocksteady first started creating shooter games that were multiplayer, if I do recall correctly, but definitely shooter games is where they started. So maybe they're not making a superhero game at all. I find that to be extremely unlikely, considering DC's and WB's prioritization of DC superhero video games, and the fact that WB, I'm pretty sure, actually owns Rocksteady. So I'm sure they have a choice in it. I'm not saying that, but I think that there's definitely a lot of pressure for Rocksteady, considering they are, at this point, pretty much presumed the best video game developers ever for superhero games, that they're going to have a lot of pressure on them from WB to make a superhero game. They've also talked about many times in the past that their dream game is a superhero video game, Superman video game, excuse me, and I think that they can really have the possibility of doing that if they spend many, many years fine-tuning it. Because they're a smaller studio, the game would probably not be coming out, in my estimation, by 2020 if they're making a Superman game. So when he says we're not going to be hearing about the details for a while, I don't think that we'll be hearing even a blimp of this game for the next year entirely. Again, if we look at Batman Arkham Knight, it took them 4 years to make Arkham Knight, which is largely using mechanics that were in previous games and building upon that from City and Asylum. I find it extremely unlikely we'll hear anything about the Superman game for a while. And he says, quote, a while, I mean literally a while, like not this year, and probably the year after that. I mean, I think that we can probably hear some stuff by 2018. But that's just hearing stuff. That's just an announcement, let alone when the game's going to be released. If they are indeed making a Superman game, then you get in the possibility they're making something that's easier to make. I mean, a Green Arrow game is way easier to make than Superman. I mean, you can't really dispute that, right? I mean, because you're playing as a regular guy that just happens to be good at aiming, as opposed to a god that is pretty much invincible, okay? So those two very different sides of the spectrum in terms of development. And also, I think that if you do make a Green Arrow game, you can use largely a lot of the stealth properties that you have from the Batman Arkham games. You can actually replicate that into a Green Arrow game, so that would in turn reduce the development time. But if they're making a straight up Superman game, that means they're building it from scratch in probably the Batman Arkham engine, but they're still building the game from scratch because Superman's obviously going to behave much differently than Batman, and we're looking at half of a decade pretty much to develop that game the way that I see it. So if you're looking for a Rocksteady game before the end of this console gen, when did the PS3 and Xbox, I guess that 2013, so I mean realistically it's more than likely not going to come out in PS4 and Xbox One, but really towards the end. It's going to be like a Last of Us sort of thing, the way that I see it likely. So I would not expect this game to come out anytime soon for several years until we get the next Rocksteady game. I'm sorry if that's disappointing to some people. On the bright side, we do have WB Games Montreal developing a DC Comics game, a Batman video game in particular, and moreover, we also have what I think is rather likely other studios that we don't know about yet. Marvel talked about how they have studios developing games that we don't even know about yet, and since you know, Telltale's revealed to be developing a Guardians of the Galaxy game, we have Capcom versus Marvel, and we also have other games probably in development at Marvel we don't even know, from devs we don't even know yet. I think that WB is employing something similar because they really want to expand, I hope, beyond just making Batman games. And Rocksteady can't do it alone, and that means recruiting other developers. We've seen in the past, Flash games were canceled from 2009. I'll be making a video on that soon. That's really exciting if you haven't heard about that. And I want to share the details for that game because it looked pretty damn cool if you ask me. But the point is, I think that the likelihood of other superhero games related to DC Comics in development right now at studios that are not WB Games Montreal or Rocksteady, which is a WB, you know, sort of company, I think is extremely, extremely likely. And that's something that we can get excited about for all of you that have posted your comments of Batman fatigue and you're tired of seeing Batman games, that maybe the chances of getting something like a Flash game are even higher here in the next few years. So I hope you guys have enjoyed the video. If you did, feel free to give it a thumbs up. Let me know your thoughts on Rocksteady's AMA and the biggest information to come out of it. Like I said, that they are in full development of their next title. We're not going to hear about it for a while, but how long a while is that is really the main question to come out of this. I hope you guys have enjoyed. I'll see you guys in the next video.